Americans, I'm Col Doulas Macgregor, President and CEO of the National Conversation. I've got some questions for you. How much did you pay for gas this week? How much was your grocery bill? Have you looked your kids in the eye and wondered quietly, privately in the dark, how bad this is going to get? If you did, you are not alone. Tens of millions of Americans are asking the same question tonight. And beneath all of it, beneath the anger, beneath the anxiety, beneath the exhaustion of feeling like no one in Washington is listening, there is one question that cuts through everything else. All for what? We are more than 2 months into an undeclared war with Iran that Washington told you was necessary, even inevitable. Right. Here is what more than 2 months of war with Iran have done for us. Gas prices have skyrocketed. Commercial ship traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which a critical share of the world's fuel, fertilizer, and feedstock must pass, is down by more than 90%. 90%. That is not merely a statistic, it's a catastrophe for the entire civilized world. When fertilizer doesn't move, crops don't grow. When fuel doesn't flow, trucks don't run. Critical medications don't arrive, food doesn't reach the shelf. The price increases coming to your grocery store in the months ahead will not announce themselves politely. They will arrive quietly and mercilessly in your heating or air conditioning bill, in your shopping cart, on your family's table. And the same men and women who pushed us into this war with Iran and the war in Ukraine will be on television explaining to you why it was worth it. I'm here to tell you that's not true. This brings me to the most important question in American politics today. Who is governing this country? For whom are they governing the United States? Our founders asked this question before we gained independence. They answered it in a language so clear, so unambiguous, that 2.5 centuries have not diminished a single word. The government of the United States derives its authority and power from the consent of the governed, not from foreign courts, not from foreign treasuries, not from foreign governments. For the American people, and only from the American people, that principle is not partisan, it is not controversial, it is the foundational premise of everything our republic stands for. And today, it is being violated systematically, openly, and with almost complete impunity. Let me ask you something that your elected officials will never ask on camera. Did you know that at least 75 countries around the world, a conservative count by any measure, prohibit dual citizens from holding elected office, appointed positions, or any significant role in government? At least 75 nations, and I want you to hear this list carefully. It's partial, but this list is not a list of rogue states or fringe governments. Germany, Japan, India, Mexico, South Korea, Norway, Singapore, Austria, the Netherlands, Israel, the Czech Republic. Every culture, every form of democratic governance, some of our closest and longest standing allies, and every single one of them arrived at the same fundamental conclusion through their own history, their own hard experience, their own democratic wisdom. The person who governs must be undivided in his or her allegiance to the people they govern, not half loyal, not conditionally loyal, undivided. But I want to draw your attention to one country on the list. One country whose inclusion in this list is not merely important, it is definitive. That country is Israel. That is correct. Under Israel's own basic law, the foundational legal framework of the Israeli state, any member elected to the Knesset, Israel's parliament, who holds foreign citizenship, must renounce that citizenship before taking office. Anyone with dual citizenship should be prohibited from holding federal appointed or elected office or any role in the U.S. government inside the United States. The American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee, known as AIPAC, and its wealthy supporters spend hundreds of millions of dollars to influence or control foreign policy objectives. Yet Israelis hold their own government to a standard of undivided national loyalty. Let that sink in for a moment. The standard for which I am advocating today, the standard that Washington, Jefferson, and Madison strongly supported, is not only the American standard, it is also the German standard, the Japanese standard, the Indian and the Norwegian standards. It is Israel's own standard. Let no one say this principle is directed at any one group. Let no one call this stance extreme. It is not extreme, it is common sense. Because the very nation at the center of this debate, Israel, does not permit dual citizens to serve in their government. We are simply asking for the same thing for ourselves in our own house. This is not about any religion. This is not about any culture. This is not about any one nation, including Israel. It is about a principle validated independently by at least 75 nations around the world, including the very nation most relevant to this debate, and stated with perfect clarity by the men who founded this republic. If you hold the public trust of the American people, your loyalty belongs to the American people, completely, without reservation, without division, without exception. George Washington stated it in his farewell address with breathtaking specificity, warning this nation about the corrosive republic-destroying danger of foreign influence penetrating the machinery of American self-government. Thomas Jefferson built it into the foundational architecture of our national philosophy. James Madison encoded it in the structural logic of our Constitution. They saw this coming. They named it. They warned us. They gave us every tool we needed to prevent it. We ignored their logic. We have no excuse for doing so. As most of you know, my adult life was spent in uniform. I led soldiers under fire into action. I looked them in the eye before leading them into the fight, always knowing that some of us would not come back. Please understand the full weight of what I am saying. The current war with Iran was not chosen by the American people. The war was not authorized by Congress. It was the choice of the chief executive, Donald Trump. To suggest that it was a catastrophe is an understatement. There were strategic alternatives to the use of force, alternatives that employed diplomacy, economic leverage, intelligence, and credible deterrence to manage differences with Iran that did not include an attack on the Iranian state and its people. This would have been a strategy that honestly balanced means and ends, a strategy that preserved and protected American national power without disrupting or destroying a substantial portion of the world's energy supply, without depriving the world's population of the fertilizer, feedstock, and food it needs, without sending food prices spiking across the world. That strategy was never seriously pursued because the people with their hands on the levers of American national power, many of them never elected, never confirmed, never accountable to a single American voter, never seriously wanted peace. What they wanted was war, and what they got was war with a country that never presented an existential threat to the United States and the American people. Now every American family pays a war tax in the form of prices at the pump, at the grocery store, in medicine, and in the flag-draped coffins that are beginning to come home. The 21st century demands a military built for 21st century realities. Strong, agile, advanced, disciplined, and above all, effectively commanded by senior military and political leaders who understand what American military power can and cannot accomplish. Our armed forces are stretched across the Middle East in service of objectives that are not clearly defined, objectives that are not attainable in wars for strategic interests that are not fundamentally American. We need and want military power that is designed to defend America, not to fight other people's wars or manage other people's empires. Let me suggest some reasons why these problems persist and why we fight wars that nobody voted for. Why do foreign lobbies write American foreign policy? Why do some of the same names recycle through scandal after scandal with zero accountability, zero consequences, and zero shame? Part of the answer, a significant part, lies in the Epstein files. What those files represent is not merely a sex trafficking scandal, though that's a big part. The files represent the operating system of debased political power in Washington, D.C. Power that is hostage to interests that are divorced from American national interest. Power that is corrupt or foreign or both. The files reveal how influence is purchased, how blackmail becomes leverage, how the most powerful people in our country achieve and maintain their positions, not through merit, not through public service, not through the consent of the governed, but through compromise, through secrets, through the quiet, unspoken understanding among certain men and women that everyone in the room has something to lose, and therefore everyone in the room stays in line. This is how wars are started without the consent of the governed. This is how foreign lobbies ultimately shape domestic as well as foreign policy. This is how the founding principles of our republic are dismantled from the inside out, while the rest of us watch and wait and wonder why nothing changes. The American people demanded the full truth. Every name, every flight log, every financial transaction, every communication, every detail, released in full to the public, without redaction and without delay. And I say this as plainly as I know how. Every individual implicated, regardless of party, regardless of title, regardless of wealth or political connection or national loyalty, must face the full, unsparing weight of American justice. No exceptions, no negotiations, no quiet retirements with full pensions and security details. Our country is our home. It is time to clean it completely, permanently, and without apology. I want to leave you with one final thought. You knew before the gas prices hit, you knew something was wrong. Before the grocery bills climbed, you knew something was coming. Before the ships stopped moving fuel through Hormuz, you knew the people making these decisions were not making them for you. The American people have known for years, in their bones, in their gut, with the instinctive clarity that no amount of media spin can permanently suppress. That something fundamental was broken in the relationship between American government and the American people it was created to serve. You were not wrong. You were right. You were not extreme. You were right. Tonight, because the consequences are obvious at your gas pump, they are in your grocery cart. They are in the homes of families whose American sons and daughters are engaged in fighting a war that was never put to a vote, in a Persian Gulf that should never have been set on fire. The national conversation exists because truth, real, documented, unfiltered, fearless truth, needs a platform that answers to no foreign lobby, no defense contractor, no political machine, and no blackmail file. Only to you, only to the American people. What we are doing is exploring the outlines of a new way forward, a new political movement that in time we hope and pray will be a new party. We invite you to go to our website, thenationalconversation.org, and join us. But I'm not asking you to donate money. You need your dollars more than ever. The road ahead is tough, and you should keep your money. There are a few among you who can't afford to support us. You know who you are. If you can, please make a direct investment in the movement for a new party. We are asking the hard questions without permission, without apology, and without a single foreign dollar attached to it. Because here is what they cannot take from us. Here is what no lobby, no blackmail file, no purchased election, no foreign government can ever extinguish. Americans who know who they are, their history, their identity, their purpose. Americans who know what this republic is supposed to be and who refuse, absolutely and permanently refuse, to be silent. Washington told us, Jefferson instructed us, Madison warned us. Thanks for listening. God bless you, your families, our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and God bless the United States of America. I think we are on the verge of unrest on the scale of the 1848 revolutions. The difference is that the regimes that were challenged in 1848 were still strong and they were still viewed as legitimate. Increasingly, the people in Europe and here in the United States no longer view the institutions of national governance as legitimate. How many times do you hear an American say these days, it doesn't matter who you vote for, you get the same outcome
Yeah.
over and over and over again? That is a very, very dangerous observation. Now, take away food, take away fuel, take away jobs. What do you get? 10% of the American population spends 90% of the money inside the economy.
Yeah. The inequality is crazy.
That's what you call a recipe for revolution.
Yeah. Ray Dalio's been warning a lot about this. It's like my next question is, how will the Gulf look like? And what you're saying is, Mari, that's not where you should focus. This has gone beyond the Gulf now, and this is going to hurt the American consumer or the American system that we've all depended on. And like the what he said, like people talking about, it doesn't matter who you vote for, you'll get the same policies. I remember I had a guest 2 days ago who was Trump's lawyer, who's now very critical of Trump after the Epstein files and the Iran war. His name is, he told me, he was going through how every year since he was born, the U.S. has been, Robert Barnes, the U.S. has been in a war. And, it gets you thinking. It's like, why? It doesn't matter who you vote for. And Trump was like the epitome of someone that's going to end wars. He's promising to end the Russia-Ukraine war in 24 hours. We all knew his political, him gaining political points. But who would have imagined, Colonel, that we'll end up stuck in Iran? Like, I'm sure you warned of it, but like to this extent?
Yeah, well, never underestimate the stupidity of your political leaders and your senior military officers. I mean, you got to be frank about that. I mean, I knew this wasn't going to work, but I do admit that I think it's gone on longer than I thought it would. I would have thought that more sober minds would have prevailed earlier and reached some sort of face-saving agreement and beat feet out of the area. I would urge everyone to think in the following terms. There was a revolution in Russia. The first revolution in Russia brought a man named Kerensky to power. Kerensky was a social democrat. And Kerensky had an opportunity to lead Russia out of the war and in new directions. He wasn't interested in killing the Tsar. He was not interested in destroying the institutions that had governed Russia for hundreds of years. But he was tempted by the Allies to stay into the war with promises of lots of gold and support and assistance. And 8 months after he took over, he was replaced by someone else who promised to end the war. And that man was Lenin. And Lenin ended the war. Mm-hmm. My advice to everybody involved in this travesty in Washington is end the war now. Don't tempt fate. We are not as concrete in our character as everyone thinks. Our society is more fragile than everyone thinks. Our civilization is more fragile. This business of destroying other people's countries, that's sheer insanity. We need all the civilization we can get on this planet right now. The last thing we should be interested in doing is destroying anyone's civilization, most of all our own. And that is arguably what's happening. And it's not yet noticeable, but it's going to become much more noticeable in the months ahead.
From a geopolitical standpoint, how do you think the rest of the world is going to react to this war? Because I think this war, despite it being short and significantly less casualties than previous wars, just the damage it has done to the global economy, as you've been explaining, but also just the image of American security, what the Gulf had to go through, what Asia had to go through, what Europe had to go through. Could we see a big pivot around the world, including the Gulf, away from that dependence on the U.S.?
I think this is already well underway. It's abundantly clear that China, once again, is essentially the engine of prosperity for the world. Now, what do I mean by that? If you go back over the last 5,000 years of history, certainly for the last 2,000, with the exception of, I would argue, the last 300 plus years, the wealth produced in China was the greatest concentration of wealth on the planet. 1492 changed that. Suddenly, there was another source of wealth. It was in the so-called New World, in the Western Hemisphere. in inexhaustible quantities of gold and silver, new crops, potatoes, corn. Suddenly, Europe's focus, Africa's focus, everything went west, away from China and India, and away ultimately from the Ottomans. That's over now. The shift is moving in the other direction because the great concentration of wealth and technology and so forth is no longer in the West, it's in China. And so you're seeing the world move almost like, magnetized minerals towards the great magnet, China. And people are upset by this in the United States, but there's good news. China is historically not a martial country. China historically does not invade other people's countries. In fact, the last time they tried something, it was in Vietnam. It ended very badly for them. The Chinese are not inclined in that direction. The Chinese already see themselves as living at the center of the world and world civilization. Why would they want to go anywhere else? So that's not all bad. And there's an opportunity for us, instead of seeing this as a great threat, to learn from this and to change course, to chart a new course into the future. That doesn't have to be hostility to China or to anyone. That's the great advantage that we always had. We were always this society that was blessed because it sat between two oceans, and it could not be dragged into everybody else's wars and misfortunes. And as long as we lived that way, we were very successful and very prosperous. But we discovered that we could influence the outcome of wars in ways that benefited us financially and economically. And we thought that that was an invitation to garrison the world and shape it to our satisfaction. It's turned into a nightmare. We need to get out. Just as the British needed to get out of India, we need to get out of all these places where we currently have forces. It's time for us to move in new directions.
Yeah.
President Trump can do that, but I don't see him doing it. I think we're going to end up being thrown out of Korea, out of Japan, out of Germany, out of Italy, about everywhere on the Eurasian continent. I don't see any evidence that we are going to put forces back into the Persian Gulf.
As a final question, I always like to ask you that, to speculate based on the information we have now, beyond the economic impact this could have on the US. What do you expect to happen in the Persian Gulf, which we've kind of talked about, but also Russia, Ukraine? And we've got Cuba as well. Do we expect a Venezuela-like operation in Cuba? Here we are. And Russia, Ukraine, is there any hope there that Trump could end that?
I think what we're going to do is eventually we're just going to leave the Persian Gulf. That's what we're going to do. We're certainly not going to pay reparations to anyone. We don't have the financial strength to rebuild everything. If you're sitting in the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, or I guess I should say Qatar, or Saudi Arabia, the people with the wherewithal, the financial wherewithal to rebuild things are sitting in Beijing. They're not in New York City or Washington or London. So I think that's the direction things are going to go there. It's a natural outcome of this stupid war. We essentially waged war against ourselves, all on behalf of Israel. The question is, can we finally divest ourselves of this Israeli problem that infects our government, that causes us to do stupid things that are antithetical to our national interest? That's another internal question.
Yeah, true. Okay. Colonel, good to see you again. Thank you for jumping on 2 days in a row. We did yesterday and today.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Good to see you, Mario. It's better when we part and you're not angry with me. I'm very happy.
Thank you so much, Colonel.
Bye-bye.